Now, I've recommended people like Derek Domino before. My only frustration with guys like that is they never talk about the occultists. They'll talk about government, individuals, blah, 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 and how badly they're treating, by and large, the Irish people. And even this video I'll absolutely recommend, although I will say people like myself and others, and especially people like, who would it be, Grindel, Grindel. Grindel 61. I mean, he used to have hundreds of videos on his channel, quite literally. And he was a fellow YouTuber who really focused on Agenda 21. I'd talk about it, absolutely, but he would literally turn up to an awful lot of these meetings about, what was happening in councils and government and all the rest of it, and fair play to the guy. But it was the hardest subject to talk about on YouTube, without a doubt. The grief that guy got from YouTube was just, and I could well relate myself, because I lost so many channels talking about the same subject. And people could say, well, that's why many aren't talking about Agenda 21. But it bloody well is the rollout of Agenda 21. Now, in this example with Derek Domino, we were talking about this in the early days of YouTube. And the terminology at the time was home blockers, blah, blah, blah. Just demonising people that had bought houses, for example. They had a bought house, they brought up a family, they could afford to still live there, their family occasionally would come back, blah, 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 all the rest of it. But you could see, even in the late noughties and into the early 2010s, people like The Guardian and various others were doing little articles and just go, look at them. They don't need to have a house that large or whatever else. Oh, wait, they've got a spare room. They've got 2 spare rooms. And I was warning at the time, look, don't be apathetic about it. And just because you're a renter, don't think this won't happen to you. Seriously, where this goes, it'll be going back to like almost Dickensian times, about, or in fact, you don't even have to go back that far. You think about the 1930s, yeah. George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier. It wasn't a fictional book, it was factual. There he was, literally saying what Britain was like for many, especially of all people, the miners, of which he had great respect for their sheer amount of graft and effort. I mean, a book everybody should read. But here we are. So this is Ireland, obviously, and they're now talking about under-occupied homes, another terminology. And it is the apathy of many, and this is why I keep saying to people, blame the public as much as anybody else. Yeah? The occultists aren't hiding it. The public, the level of denial, the apathy, until it affects themselves, usually by and large, directly. Yeah? I mean, you see the nudge units, the drumbeat, the under-occupied. And then it will come to it will come to anybody who's got rented accommodation, blah, blah, blah. Is there a spare room? Is there a box room? Is there whatever? Yeah? And most people don't see it coming. And they'll sell it with, well, especially lonely people, having some other people in their house, give them somebody to talk to. The thing about it, people bought houses, all the rest of it. Do they want social engineering on steroids? Because it is the communistic collective, yeah? You get quite literally in amongst them and destroy everything about Western civilization. Imagine it. Because you're noticing property prices changing in certain areas already. And it's becoming less attractive by the day to have houses that have just apparently naturally, in many instances, gone up over a certain period of time, over to a certain tax band, a council tax band. And then remember, in places with some of the highest energy costs in the planet, in the world, based on this communistic idea of net zero. And remember, all the ones that are promoting the net zero, they're, hey, how many yachts do I need to have? Private planes, all the rest of it, blah, blah. They're living like, while telling you, you know what, you've got to suck it, get a paper straw and we've got to get rid of single-use plastics. But I'm not seeing, going back a few decades, where most liquids were in bottles. We actually already had a pretty green economy using common sense. Okay, glass bottles could break. Reheat, reshape. There you go. Infinitely recyclable. And here we are, and you're like, Scott, what's this got to do with this? It's everything to do with this. Totalitarian control based on all these crises of which they create or manifest out of all proportion, not least of which is the weather. Like, seriously. I mean, I did a vid in the last day or so talking about you can't talk about the summer of 76, certainly not in the Daily Mail. One comment at the time in 6 hours. Are you kidding me?
Somebody somewhere has looked at your home.
And remember, as he says in this vid, all these censuses of which the gullible were like, yeah, here's my exact, how many, and yeah, this is how it's occupied, blah, 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 all the rest of it, Remember, how do you get to you'll own nothing? They'll tax you into oblivion, whether you own property or not. Still, I'm not wearing it, Scott. It's not affecting me. Blah, blah, blah. All right, okay, how about this? The UK government is now considering forcing British citizens to house Muslim immigrants in their own homes, especially people in public housing. Do not for 1 second become so complacent that you think that this is not going to happen to you. Seriously. Especially people in public housing who could be evicted if they refuse. This isn't compassion. This is turning native Britons into second-class citizens in their own country. What is your take on this? Well, it's Agenda 21. What is it with so many that they can't fucking talk about what it's called? You will never see what's going on unless you research Agenda 21. Fine people were warning for decades. Decades. There's videos 20 plus odds, some more than that. Some a lot more than that. Warning exactly how they were going to roll it out. Listen to this guy.
Surely this is utter madness, isn't this? Isn't this just going to encourage more people to come across via dinghy? Because this time they go, not a hotel, but a house. Or a flat even.
Well, I want to quote Pope Francis, whose funeral it was today, and he was speaking about immigration and asylum. And he said, let us treat others with the same passion and compassion that we would like to be treated. So that's a good thought experiment. You did it a little bit thinking about being a landlord or being a rentee, to think about both sides of the issue. And what if it was us? What if it was our family that had to flee war and terror? How would we want to be treated if we arrived in the UK? And appropriate accommodation is probably one of the first things that we would like to have. I think we've got to grab the positive in this story. I'm always a glass half full, but
this is going to become a thing. Honestly, occasionally, I have an individual, and yeah, for some people, the individual may say I'm digging at them. But, look, It's all going to turn to shit, Scott, blah, blah, blah. And I keep thinking to myself, well, why are you still here making bloody comments? If you know that this is, there's only one way it's going to go, you're wasting your time, blah, blah, blah. Well, why are you still making comments? Seriously. Why? I still think, and you know who I'm talking to you. I can't mention the name because I'm too polite. But seriously, I'm not wearing it anymore. Why are you still making comments when you keep saying it's all going to be shit in the basket anyway and you're wasting your time? Or words to that effect, or the inference. I still think it's all to play for. Absolutely.
Person. I don't want a broken record stuck on misery. And I guess we need to see this as progress. It was costing a fortune.
Seriously, this guy, highly skilled in bullshittery.
Keeping people in hotels.
So remember, most of the UK, most of the native population do not want these uninvited people in here who are in the first of the queue of everything, not having a worry in their lives about any kind of cost, debt, anything. Cops are apparently starting to ignore them on the roads. Certain license plates, all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. No insurance, no blah, blah, blah.
We will see at least £2 billion worth of savings to the taxpayer. And it's also better for someone who's in a very difficult circumstance of having to claim asylum or give them the dignity.
At what stage does he actually, in this instance, talk about native locals? He doesn't give a flying fuck. Honestly, I have kept saying this for years. It's not just about forcing you to accept people from third world nations that whose idea of any kind of civility is shocking. And with constant hands out, and at the front of the queue of everything, and it's never enough for the occultists. And then you'll get to the point, well, renting or owning, it's no longer yours. And then you'll be told, well, you're not fitting in. You know, we're all global citizens. Be assured. And then, as I said, many native locals will be told, no, you need to go to India. You need to go to China. I keep saying, they didn't build all these ghost cities for nothing. And while people say, oh, it's just all a big Ponzi scheme and all the rest of it, be assured the cheery occultists said that we have to make some lemons out of this. Lemonade out of lemons, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look at these places. Why don't we have lots of people living them? Oh, yeah, they could be better, blah, blah, blah. But if we get them sorted out themselves, I cannot tell you how much these occultists want to utterly shred Western nations.
Of their own front door. But I do think you've hit an issue. We do have a shortage of rentable accommodation. And I think we need some creative solutions for that. My family, we live in a community. There's 11 of us that live under one roof, 6 different families, no biological connection between many of us. And yet about, I think it's 8 million people in the UK live on their own. And with a program like the Homes for Ukraine program, many people were able to welcome a refugee into their home.
And remember, how long before you're forced? And remember, how many of them that will be given access to wherever you live will be activists themselves through networks of various handlers, all the rest of it. There is no fucking end to where this goes, because most people are not aware of this interconnected 10% of society that is to see that there are so many aspects of society that people are just blissfully unaware of is just astounding. Many of these occultists, funnily enough, are in the churches, they're in the third sector, they're in the charities, they're in the councils, they're in the NHS, they're in the courts. I keep blabbing on about books like Marilyn Ferguson's The Aquarian Conspiracy, Personal Social Transformation in the 1980s, now rebranded in the modern era. It's one of their Bibles, one of these New Age Bibles. And we all need to do this. We need to bring about a new world order in our transformational change. Yeah? Can't be arsed reading it. No, can't be arsed reading it, apparently.
And there are so many benefits to both us as hosts. It's actually bad for our mental health. We have worse health outcomes if we live on our own. So maybe we need to get creative and start.
It's coming. And hey, look, for most people, all you need to do is look in a fucking mirror. Seriously. And I remember years ago, some of them looked into what people like myself and others were putting out about Agenda 21. Their genius idea was to go and get a motorhome or some stealth whatever, so that they could. And I warned loads of people even then. It says, look, you're dealing with a depreciating asset. You're losing any kind of family ties. You're surrounded in plastic. Everything you're drinking out of is absolutely plastic. Blah blah blah. Yeah. And a depreciating asset with a fucking license plate attached to it. Yeah. And what have they been saying in the last couple of years? Yeah. And councils are going to start charging council tax. Literally through people's reg plates. There is no end to where this goes. Because of people's apathy. Truly. Who gives these tossbags the right? Apathy. The public. That's who allows this to happen. As opposed to, hey, what are you all really all about? Could you explain your backgrounds? Are you associated with various blah, blah, blah? Always be polite, though. And for the love of God, the last people you want, when it gets to that people start waking up, is your Tommy Robinsons and whoever else of this. Be assured, they're absolutely controlled ops. Yeah. Do you hear them talking about Freemasonry, the occult, the New Age, Agenda 21? Not a fucking peep. And I'll speak to you soon.